much I love my church. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad we're gathered. When God's people gather, God shows up in a special way. And you're a blessing by coming this morning. You're being a blessing to everyone here around you. And you're also bringing a delight to the Lord's heart. So I'm so glad we're gathered, even with our mess. This is the day that the Lord has made. So help me out. Let us be glad and rejoice in it. I want to give you a reminder, or for the first time, an introduction to our precautions that we're following as we meet during this season, the coronavirus being out there. As you drove in, you'll notice there was some parking instructions so that when you go back out and the second service comes, you'll have the middle section of the parking there where as you go out the doors, it'll be open and no cars will be driving by, so that if you'd like to visit and catch up out there outside where there's plenty of fresh air, you can linger and visit, and that's what the reason for our parking the way we're doing it for the first and second service. I'm grateful to you for wearing a mask. We're just loving our neighbor by being cautious and just going that extra step and wearing a mask. And I know it's not fun, but this is a way to get started again. I'm so glad we got started. I'm so glad we have this building. As I walked in this morning and I looked at what the Lord has given us, what a wonderful place to be. There are some churches can't meet right now because they're renting and not allowed to come in. But we have a beautiful building and we have it all set up, and there's no chairs to set up. There's no hauling of platforms and all that. God has given us this, and so we're going to use it. And I'm glad we are. We are still following the reduced attendance guidelines. The Ozaukee County Health Department just changed those guidelines so that at bars and restaurants they can have 75% capacity. For special events like this, we fall into the special events category. They've moved the capacity up to 50% of the room, but we're still being conservative and still keeping it at 25%. So we're taking a conservative approach. You notice there's no Bibles under the chairs so that no one touches anything that they don't take with them. But there are other things in the pockets that you can take with you. Once you have something in your hand, you take it with you. And so that's how we're approaching things. And at the end of the service, I'd love for us to hang out, but we're going to hang out outside instead of inside. No coffee this week. We're working on coffee next week. Coffee outside in the parking lot. That's my goal for next week. And so thank you for helping us get started again after this time of sheltering in place and making Sunday mornings where God has set it aside to be a time for His people to really focus completely on Him and to be with one another. I want to thank everyone who's joined us online, and I want to give you a shout out and welcome into the camera. We're doing our best to live stream, so this is live, and each Sunday we're improving our approach by getting better equipment and getting better at it. So today, I don't know if you've heard, today is Father's Day. Oh, and do I love Father's Day? And I'll tell you why in a moment. But for all the dads here, this is sort of a gift to you. I want you to watch this video. And the title of the video is Stuff Dads Never Say. Some of you feel like nobody understands me. Nobody understands me. I want you to see there are some people that understand your world. Go ahead and take a look.
Life is always fair. I really enjoy repeating myself over and over again. I just love when the kids talk back to me. I don't care if you get a job this summer. I don't care if you get detention. I can't open this jar. See if Mom can open it. Just take your time in there, okay? No means maybe. Hey, why don't you bring that ball inside and play with it? Hey, don't put that back where you found it. Just leave it on the floor. You, bacon. If you put a dent in the car, it's really no big deal. It's 10 a.m. Go back to bed. Look, whatever your friends are doing, just do the exact same thing. I got more than enough sleep last night. If your friends are okay with it, then I'm okay with it. Stop signs are just a suggestion. You don't need a chaperone. You don't need a seatbelt. You don't need a savings account. You should buy the jeans with the holes in them. Hey, we're all gonna go to church, but you can just sleep in, okay? Can we please just hang out in here for another 10 minutes? Hey, can we get some more bickering back there? All right, bills. Yay, traffic. Woohoo, taxes. Yes. Laundry. Hey, can you kids come in here and jump on my bed? Quick, go tell Mom what happened right away. You don't need to finish your dinner. Hey, look at your phone when I'm talking to you. I wish I had a smaller TV. We got you that phone for a reason. Texting boys. All right, everyone, listen up. Mom and I are going out of town this weekend, so please, mess up the whole house while we're gone. Please throw a few parties while we're gone. Please forget about the dog entirely while we're gone. Hey, when you're finished pouring that, can you just leave it out on the counter all day? Thanks.
That guy knows my world. I could watch that every Father's Day. I think last Father's Day, if I remember right, we had Stuff Dads Don't Say Part 1. This is Part 2. Next year, I know you dads, you're going to want to see this again. We'll probably play both videos, right? I'm glad that somebody knows my world. Besides my kids. It's time to worship the Lord. Would you stand? And our music team's going to lead us in expressing our hearts to God, the Father.
Did you see the God display this morning? Anybody? Let me read this. Romans chapter 1, verse 20. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. There was a divine display every day.
This is my Father's word, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and rounding rings, the music of the spheres. This is my Father's word. I rest me in the thought of rocks and trees, of skies and seas. His hand the wonders wrought. This is my Father's word. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, declare their Maker's praise. This is my Father's word. He shines in all that's fair. The rustling grass, I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's word. Oh, let me never forget. And though the road seems oh so strong, God is the ruler yet.
I'm going to stop us right there. As we sing a hymn like this, the melody is so familiar, you might not be grabbing the depth of this lyric. Are we aware of the gigantic wrongs that we're experiencing right now? As a world, how about personally? Some of you might have some wrongs. Me, my wife, third stage 3 cancer, we just found out. That's a wrong, and it is strong. But God is the ruler. And it is said that anything that happens to us, in a sense, is for the good of those who love Him and are called by His purpose. The good. God's got a good. He's going to take us there. As we sing these lyrics, sure, the wrong is strong, but God's the ruler. Let's intro that third verse.
This is my Father's word. Oh, let me never forget. And though the road seems oh so strong, God is the ruler yet. And though
you realize, as we were singing, you're looking not at the next generation, you're looking at the now generation. And so it makes my heart so glad to see our children who are no longer children. We're now walking on their own when it comes to the relationship with Jesus, walking on their own 2 feet, following the Lord, and being part of his kingdom gospel work. I want to say again, happy Father's Day. You know why I love Father's Day? Because I get to celebrate dads, and I get to talk about God's call in our lives. And so this Sunday, like most Father's Day Sundays, I want to focus the message on our dads. And I want to start by having you watch a short video that shows the many shoes that a dad wears during his kid's lifetime. Go ahead and take a look.
Hey, Dad. Mom and baby are doing great. You got a baby girl.
Honey.
There you go, one more.
Honey, are you seeing this? Step, there you go. Good job, you did it.
You ready? Give me a good hit. Give me a good hit. Good job. Go, 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 Morning, neighbor.
Papa, I'm scared.
You got it, buddy. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Go ahead. Yeah, good job, bud. My girl.
Alright, now with this one, you're gonna have to drive really, really slow.
We're so thankful for this food you've given us. Be a blessing to our body. Amen.
Daddy's home.
Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm just glad you're okay.
Now, I want her home by 10.
Yes, sir. Don't try anything.
Stop.
Hi,
Hi, hi. Wow, what's gotten into you?
Who gives this woman to be married to this man? Her mother and I.
To watch that last scene, I think of how the life of a dad, the life a dad lives, it seems to go by very quickly. My daughter is going to have me walk her down on August 1st. And I remember the day that we dedicated her, and I brought her to the front of the church. And today was supposed to be a dedication Sunday for parents to dedicate their children, but we decided that many months ago. We thought we need to have it on Father's Day, just as I remember dedicating Isabella on Father's Day. But of course, Corona changed those plans, but we will pick a date for you to bring your children forward and dedicate them. But that just seemed like the other day that Pastor Bill was holding up Bella and dedicating her to the Lord. And now I'm going to, on August 1st, walk her down the aisle. She's going to have a small wedding with just family and her closest friends. And my son today celebrates his first Father's Day. And so, son, don't blink, because when you bring your daughter forward to dedicate her, and Morgan, you two bring her forward, you don't want to blink too many times because you'll be standing in those same shoes. Father's Day is a great day to be reminded. If you're a dad, Father's Day is a great day to be reminded that you've been entrusted and called to a great calling. And where God calls, here's the good news: He equips. That's what the message is about today, to step into the shoes that God has called you to and God has entrusted to you to fill. And I've titled today's message, How to Be an MVP Dad. Now, I know not everyone listening today is a dad, but I want you to realize that some of you, even though you're not biological fathers, you are spiritual fathers. And you are mentors. And you you are spiritual influencers in the lives of people around you. And so whether you're a dad, whether you're a mentor, spiritual influencer, whether you're one of the moms here, everyone will have something for them in this message. I want to begin with prayer, and then we'll look to God's Word. Father God, I thank you for your Father's heart. Thank you for how you reveal your heart posture towards us. You see us as your children. You see us as those that are dearest in all the world. And Lord, we come this morning with mixed emotions about our heritage, about what we experience, all the adults in the room, related to our fathers. So I ask you, Father God, I ask you to heal the past, remodel the present, so that you can change the future. Bind the enemy who would try to steal the seeds of your word and tear down the work that we're going to do this morning. Bind him and let your word fall on good ground and allow it to produce a great harvest in the lives of the dads and the families in our church. We ask you to take this time that we've dedicated to bring our hearts and minds under your word, and I pray you would do great things in our lives and for the sake of our families, our children, and ultimately for your name's sake, so we reflect well who you are. And I pray this in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. Amen. My boys are big-time basketball fans, and so you can imagine last year they were over the moon when it came to the Bucks going to the finals, right? And they also think a lot about Giannis. They always correct me. It's not Giannis, it's Giannis. And they thought he deserved the MVP. Hands down, he was worthy of last year's MVP, and that's what he got. And I recently learned Giannis is a dad, and so it got me to thinking about what it takes to become an MVP dad. And I'm now looking back on almost 24 years as a dad, and I'm thinking about what God taught me during this time. 11 years into our marriage, I became a father with Paul. 2 years later, we were surprised again when we found out Isabella was coming. 2 years later, we were shocked again when we found out Marcus was coming. And then finally, it was still a surprise when Nate, we found out, was going to be part of our family. And as my family grew and my quiver became full, I was continuously discovering what it would take to be the kind of dad God intends for me to be. And I was continually making mistakes and learning that is not how to be an MVP dad, and this is how to do it. And so as I was recognizing what I needed to get better at, where I needed to step my game up, I kept getting equipped by God. And along the way, God taught me and gave me the grace I needed. And so I'm going to share what I've learned from God's playbook, and I'm going to set out for you 7 sets of shoes. I'm mixing the metaphors there a little bit. MVP dad, 7 sets of, championship sneakers you've been called to wear, called to fill if you're going to be an MVP father for your children. Are you ready for what we're going to do to this morning, guys? Because if you're ready, go ahead and tell me. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Here's number 1. MVP dads must put on the shoes of a fighter. Not to fight with your children, but to fight for them. You need to fight for them. Fight for your children to bring them with you and leave them a legacy. You're going to have to fight. And I know you're tired. And I know there's points where you're like, I've been at it for a while, but you're going to have to keep fighting. You're going to have to have an attitude of a fighter, a noble warrior who's in a fight that matters. Listen to Jesus in John 10, verse 10 and 11. Jesus said, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy." There is a thief who's coming for your children. He's coming and he's relentless. And Jesus warned that all that God wants that's good for us, this thief wants to take it from you. And so Jesus said, the good shepherd, referring to himself, lays down his life for the sheep. There's a need to lay down your life for the flock that God has entrusted into your care. God made you the shepherd of your home. And so if you're going to be a shepherd, you're going to have to do the work of a shepherd, and that means you need to have not only a shepherd's staff, but you need to carry a rod, because the enemy is coming. And the enemy's relentless. I see the enemy working now in every realm of society. And they want to get to your kids. Here's what 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13, 14 tells us. The Apostle Paul writing to the Corinthians in a time that was not very easy to be a Christian in that city of Corinth, this metropolitan place that was incredibly worldly. And this is what he says: be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong, let all that you do be done in love. After you do everything, to be on guard and watchful, to stand firm and not push back, and not fall back, rather. To act like men, meaning being courageous. To be strong and hang in there. After you've done all that, make sure you do it all in a manner that reflects love. Do it all in a way that shows that you belong to Jesus. I want you to see this again, and I want you to say it with me. This first exhortation Paul gives us: be watchful. Go ahead and say that together. Be watchful, meaning you gotta keep your eyes open for spiritual danger. You need to be on guard. Say this next exhortation: stand firm in the faith. In other words, you need to hold tight to your convictions and not fall back and be pushed back. You've got to be immovable in your commitment. Or otherwise, you will give up. You never should take a knee unless you're kneeling in prayer for your kids. You should never throw in the towel. You should never allow yourself to be pushed back. Your kids need you to fight for them. What's the third exhortation? Go ahead and say it. Act like men. Be courageous. You got to find your courage, men. To act like men, Paul is implying there that you're going to be courageous. And then lastly, what's the last part? Go ahead and say it. Be strong. Because why would you need to be strong? Because you're to fight. And so you need to hang in there and be tough, because what God is calling you to is not for the faint of heart. It's just not. And so if you're going to do all those things, you need to do them, not only do the right things, but you need to do them in the right way. And here's what the Apostle Paul tells us: when you're doing all this, let all that you do be done in love. All of it needs to be done in love. Does anyone remember the movie Cinderella Man, starring Russell Crowe? Remember that movie? Okay. During the Depression, and Russell Crowe, he played this person, a real life person, a boxer named James Braddock. It's based on a true story. Braddock was a pretty good boxer, but he lost his passion and purpose for fighting, so he quit getting into the ring. He quit boxing. But when the Depression hit and his family slid into poverty, he made a startling comeback. He was fighting with passion, and he fought with focus, upsetting younger and better boxers. And at one point in the movie, a stunned reporter says seen something different about him from what he saw before Braddock had set down his boxing gloves. Now that he came back and he was fighting in a whole different way, he says, "What are you fighting for?" And Braddock says, "I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for my kids. I'm fighting for milk so they can eat." And as John Eldredge, who's a well-known Christian author, who once actually I had the pleasure to talk to because he called me. Isn't that cool? He called me. John Eldredge called me. We talked for a while. It's another story for another day. But this is what he writes in one of his books directed to Christian men. He says, eventually a man or a woman must come to realize that there are certain things in life worth fighting for. Take anything good, true, or beautiful upon this earth and ask yourself, can this be protected without a fight? The answer is no. So that's why the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians tells us what he tells us. And he says, man, when you step up to the calling of God in your life, this is what you need to understand. And so that's what we see in God's book. God wrote a book, and in God's book, he is calling us, and he's challenging us to fight the good fight of faith. And so we need to fight well for right things, the right way, with the right motive, for the right purpose. Amen? Okay, spend a little bit more time on that than I want to. I got to get to number 2. Number 2, I'm opening up my playbook for you, and this is what I've learned. If you're writing these down, here's number 2. Be a godly example. Be an example. Your children need to see a model of what God the Father is like, and they're going to look to you. Whether you like it or not, they're going to look to you. You might not want them to look to you, but they will look to you. Your children need to see a model of what God the Father is like. Your dads, your kids draw conclusions about God's nature from your reactions and your responses. So when my kids were growing up, I started to carry it, and cell phones became a thing. When they called me, my practice was to try to always answer, because I wanted to reflect a father who is accessible, just like God the Father is accessible to us. And so I thought about how am I projecting to my kids God the Father. It's not just what they see, by the way. It's also what you do that they don't see. Because there's a spiritual dimension to this. Throughout the Old Testament, we see this again and again. The Word of God says that what we do will be visited on the 3rd and 4th generation. That which is not good will be visited the 3rd and 4th generation. That is which is good is going to be visited on 1,000 generations. God is contrasting when fathers and mothers are following Him and doing right. Their kids are going to be the recipients, either the good or the ill. And so when it comes down to it, what you're doing, what you're becoming is going to impact your kids. They are like those ink pads. You are the ink stamp. You take the stamp, you put it in the ink pad. You ever do this with your kids? Ever start stamping things? Well, they're the ink pad. You're the stamp, and they're going to take the form, and what you're going to do is reproduce what you are becoming. So if there's something in my life that's out of order and wrong, I don't want that to be reproduced and multiplied in my kids. I want better for them. The Apostle Paul was a model man. He was a spiritual father to Timothy. And he addresses Timothy as my true son in the faith. And he said to Timothy in 1 Corinthians 11:1, he says, follow my example just as I follow the example of Christ. What do you think about that? He's saying, go ahead and look at me. Go ahead. And imitate me just as I imitate Christ. Follow me as I follow Christ. When it comes to how I approach relationships and money and work habits and how I approach my emotions and my temper and my faith priorities, my example is going to have an impact on my children. And I don't want to leave them with the wrong pattern. I don't want to leave them with disorder. I've heard it said cancer is what results from the multiplication of disorder. When you're stamping out disorder. I want to multiply and reproduce that which is healthy and pleasing and leads to blessings. Are you with me, men? One example is there's one morning out of 7 where God says, come and set it aside. The church met on the first day of the week, it said. That was their practice, that was their habit. They met together on the first day of the week. And so, in my kids' experience, no matter where we are, what we're doing, well before I was a pastor, Sunday mornings is not something we decide, what are we going to do Sunday mornings? Absolutely not. They have learned. And so when we have been on vacation, even in Florida, oh my goodness, we only have one more day. It's Sunday. They don't say, what should we do, Dad? Beach? Another day at Disney? No, they never even think there's any other question. They have been impacted, and they know our values, and they know what's important to us and to God. I want to better for my kids. So guys, I want to give you props. You are here today. You are modeling for your kids. You're modeling. Men, you just know that when you leave an area unattended in your walk with Jesus, in your character, in your priorities, it will be multiplied and reproduced in your kids and your grandkids. And so you'll see characteristics of yourself even in your grandkids. And I want to model and reproduce, which is healthy. So dads, you're going to have to ask God to remodel you so you can be an example. Are you with me? That's number 2. Those are the second set of shoes. The first set of shoes of the fighter is really focused on your attitude and your heart posture towards your responsibility as a dad. Now we're getting into some of the how-to shoes, okay? Here's number 3. Put on the shoes of a listener. MVP dads. That might sound like, well, of course. No, but here's the thing. I was doing some research. The average dad in America spends 5 minutes of quality time with their kid a day. 5 minutes a day. Well, add it up over a week. 30-some minutes a week. Well, they're spending a lot more time with quality time with their friends and with the screen and with media. So here's the thing. Being a listener is going to cost you some time. Some of you would rather give your kids money or give your kids stuff rather than time. How much time do you think you might spend listening to your kids? How do you expect them to listen to you if you're not listening to them? I'm a pastor preacher, so I'm good at talking, right? I want to tell them. I want to present, here's what you need to know. I've had to learn how to be better at listening first. Why should they listen to you if you don't listen to them? Their friends listen to them, and they listen to their friends. Wouldn't it be better for them to listen to you, especially during the teen years? And when they're not ready to talk, here's what I've discovered. You just kind of hang in there. You just hang in there until they're ready. You can't force them to be ready to talk. But there's moments, usually late at night, when I want to go to bed so bad, and that's all of a sudden when it seems like they want to start to say what's going on. Yeah, I want to know what's going on. I'm just touching on these. All these go together. They go hand in hand. Anyone by itself won't make you an MVP dad. Yes, you have to be a fighter. You need to be a noble warrior. You need to be a godly example. You need to be a listener. You also need to be an encourager. You need to step into the shoes of an encourager because hearts need encouragement, especially children need affirmation. I found it amusing and bemusing. Yesterday, I watched my daughter Isabella holding my granddaughter Amaya, and we had spent a good part of the day together, and it was getting towards the end of the day, and Isabella says to Amaya, she says, I need your affirmation, because we're playing with her, we want her to smile at us, we want her to react. Does any of this matter, Amaya? Her aunt, what she refers herself to Zia, which is an Italian aunt, Zia Isabella needs your affirmation because I'm doing all this to love on you. Encourage me in it. Dads, we need to walk in the shoes of an encourager because children need affirmation. When Jesus Christ showed up for his baptism, 30 years of age, we don't know anything about him except the experience in Jerusalem when he was 12. Other than that, we have 30 years of silence. He walks to the banks of the Jordan River. John the Baptist says, I should not be baptizing you. And Jesus said, no, you're going to do it. We're going to fulfill all righteousness. I'm going to be baptized by you, John. So he gets into the water. He comes up out of the water after baptism, and his dad shows up at his big day. God the Father's voice is heard by all those present. And what they hear is, this is my son. This is my son. It speaks of identity, right? And he says, with whom I am well pleased. Which speaks affirmation. God the Father says, you are my son whom I love, and with whom I'm well pleased. Even Jesus was getting affirmation from God the Father after 30 years, just as of being on the planet Earth and now just beginning his public ministry. Fathers they're just supposed to be natural encouragers. That's why the Apostle Paul, speaking in the church of Thessalonica, says this in 1 Thessalonians 2, verse 11. For you know that we dealt with you as a father deals with his children. And what's the first thing he gives as an example of how fathers deal with their children? We dealt with you like a father deals. The first example, encouraging you. We encouraged you, we comforted you, and we urge you to live lives that are worthy of God. In a group this size, I would imagine there are some men and some women. You have a hole in your heart. Because a dad that you really cared about never noticed what you accomplished. Never told you, I see your character. I see your future. I am so proud of you. That's what affirmation is. It's speaking a blessing. And this is one thing I made sure to do. I wanted to make sure I didn't falter in this area. I remember going to the football banquet. My son played football just 1 year. My son Paul, the oldest. He decided to play football his senior year of high school. Never touched a football helmet before that. At the banquet, he was on defense, and the defensive coach said, Paul was just as good as the starters, and he could have started. The only reason I didn't start him was because he just started playing football this year. This guy's playing football since 4th grade. And then Paul got the Big John Award, was like the overall contributor to the team. First year playing football. I was proud. You know what, though? And I was there. I was much more proud of something else. I was much more proud that one of the other players who had a little bit of a disability, and so he was easy to get picked on, Paul would stand up for that player. He would say, stop picking on him. And not only that, he didn't just, have pity on that player. He extended his friendship. He made him a friend. He would bring him to things that he would do with his friends. He was even invited to Paul's wedding, and he was there at Paul's wedding. That's what I was proud of him. And I have expressed that to him. When I see Jesus in my children, I want them to hear about it from me. Men, I want to tell you, I'm proud of you. You could be golfing, you could be fishing. You're here in a service with your family. And God the Father wants you to know that as his son, he's proud of you. Here are 3 books I really highly recommend. If you're interested in them, I will send you the PowerPoint so you can have them. These are 3 books that are incredibly good when it comes to equipping in this regard. Affirmation, speak over them what they've done right. Be there for them at their important events. Put your arm around them and tell them you've done a great job. Affirm your kids. That's what this generation is missing. A mother can be a great encourager. My mom has the gift of encouragement. But something about a father's affirmation, that really sticks out. How many set of shoes so far have we covered? Anybody keeping track? 4? Okay, here's number 5. Number 5, you need to, and you want to, wear the shoes of the teacher. This is the way, walk in it. Isaiah 30, verse 21. You want to wear the shoes of a teacher. God the Father teaches us, and we're to be a teacher. Stop and think about the life skills you possess. Do you work with your hands? Do you work with a computer? Do you work in business? What is it you work in? Teach your kids that which you know. Is your kid learning about PlayStation 4? Is your kid a Fortnite boy? Are they getting really good at doing what, you build a little thing and you try to survive on the island? Are they really getting good? Or maybe they got the basketball thing. I see my kids playing that basketball thing and they're getting good playing with the basketball on the screen. I spent my time with Marvel superheroes. I knew they were cool before anyone else knew they were cool. And so when my dad wanted to teach me, he is a master gardener. You know what I know about gardening? Nothing at all. And it's not my dad's fault. It's my fault. I was too fixated on Thor and Iron Man and Captain America. And I wouldn't let him teach me. Teach your kids the Bible. Teach them how to read the Bible. Don't assume they'll know. Read it to them. Teach them how to pray. Model it and show them. Teach them how to manage finances. Teach them how to pay bills, how to save for the future. Teach them how to give to the work of the gospel. A couple of my kids have had a child that they've been supporting every month with their own money since they were in the middle of high school. Teach them to do it, and they still do. They still have those children. I remember with one of my sons, I taught them about tithing, and I took 10 pennies, and I said, here's 10 pennies, this represents what you get when you work, and you take 1 penny, set it over here, and this is for Jesus, this is for Jesus. And my son said, only 1? It's like, he started moving more over. I go, no, the one is the tithe. He's like, no, Jesus needs more. It's like, only 1? See, it gets a little bit more challenging when you add the zeros, but you teach them when they're young. You teach them. and equip them so that when they leave your home, they are fully equipped to step into the purposes of God and experience the blessings of God and move forward in the legacy that you have established for them. Teach them about everything they're going to need. Insurance, cars, investing, everything. Be their teacher. Because that's the heart of what it means to be a father. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, in the way she should go. Train them up. Train them up. Bring them up. And that means teaching them. Now, I want you to understand, everything I'm talking about, Jesus needs to be in it. He needs to be in it. Jesus shows us the way, and he enables us to walk the way out. 7 categories of shoe wearing, and Jesus needs to be in all of it. I have 2 more sets of shoes. Do you have room in your heart and head for 2 more? 2 more? To fill the shoes of an MVP dad is not for the faint of heart. And maybe that's why the book of Wisdom, the book of Proverbs tells us this. It declares the glory of children is their fathers. Isn't that interesting? The glory of children is their fathers. I was thinking about that this week. And it caused me to go flipping through this journal that I kept when the kids were younger. Anytime they said or did something interesting, I would write it down in the journal. And I was looking through that journal, and I came across this. Tonight, Daddy plays his first softball game in probably 8 or 10 years. I didn't do too badly. One of the joys of my life took place tonight. Hearing Bella from behind the backstop pointing at me at third base, saying, "That's my papa! That's my papa! That's my papa!" It's all night long. That's my papa. I was like, glory of my child was Daddy. That's my daddy. And Paul was there. And when we got home, Paul said, "I won, Daddy. I won." And Bella corrected him. He said, "No, you didn't win. Daddy won." And Paul's response was this: if Daddy won, that means I won. If Daddy wins, the whole family wins. Maybe that's why the scripture says the glory of the children is their fathers. Here's number 6. You need to wear the shoes of a protector. Children need boundaries and they need discipline. Put another way, they need an authority in their lives to set boundaries there through the different stages of their lives. They need that guidance. Give a football to a kid, a basketball, and they're going to go off running down the field or dribbling down the court, and they need to know where the boundary lines are. He wants to know where the boundaries are. Even God gave his children boundaries in Genesis 3. You can eat any of the trees of the garden. You can eat any, but I've given you all this. I've made all this for you, but there's one tree. There's a boundary around it. Don't eat of that one tree. That's a boundary he gave them. A boundary, and he gave them consequences. Like your kid who you tell, don't go past that mailbox, and what do? They inch up to the mailbox. What do? They look at you and they're like, they want to see. They want to see. They're going to see what are you going to do? And I've learned since God has given me authority, I don't need to get angry or emotional. I just say, I see you made a bad decision. And I trigger the consequence. See, for God gave his kids in the garden a boundary, and when they crossed it, he triggered the consequence. And when they run into your protective authority, it develops character. You run into authority going 80 miles an hour down Port Rock, Washington Road. You're going to run into authority, and it's going to develop character. You want to help them so that when they are on their own, they run into your authority, they run into your boundaries, so they won't have to run into other kinds of authority. Denzel Washington talks about, he's not shy about describing why he has been successful. He talks about the reason behind his success. He talks about faith in Jesus, and he also talks about out of all the friends he grew up with, he was the only one who didn't end up in jail. And he says the only difference was the fact that I had a father in my home. I had a father in my home. And you know what? I've often found that moms are the personification of grace, right? The dad has to be law. I'm speaking in generalities. But I've noticed ladies, they're like compassion and let's just kind of see how we can. Dads are like, no. I'm speaking in generalities. I don't mean, when I say they need to be the law, I don't mean they need to be overbearing, powering up, harsh, or dictatorial. Kids are looking for boundaries. And something gets unloving to calmly spank a child. It's very politically correct. Scripture, though, tells us something different. If I have to choose between what the world thinks is the right way versus what the Bible tells me, I'm going to go with the Bible. I'm just going to go with the one who created us, who thought us up, who actually knows what he's talking about. And the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 12 that just like good fathers on earth give their children discipline when they need it, why wouldn't God the Father do the same? So that God the Father does do the same. And we read in the passage that discipline is not pleasant. It's actually painful when you're undergoing it, but it develops things in you that you need developed. So even kids, they crave for someone to provide boundaries and be an immovable object. And sometimes I've discovered my kids want that for other kids, right? They'll say, "Dad, something's wrong." I shared the story once. When we go to a restaurant and we'd be sitting at the table, and a table nearby, some child was just going, having a meltdown, right? And my kids would look at me like, "Dad, aren't you going to do something?" I'm like, "No, it's not my responsibility. You are." They know when something is out of order. In fact, my son Nate saw that in his own brothers and sisters. Here's something I wrote in my journal, my dad's journal. Nate ran into my office and he said this. This is July, I don't know what year, so I don't know how old these guys are at this point. And Nate says, "Paul hit me in the head. Next time he does that, take Paul, bend him over, and tell him you need a spanking, and then you get the spanking spoon." He's giving me directions exactly how I'm supposed to do this. The next step, then he said, pulling his shirt off, what? Pulling his pants off, what? Even his underwear, so it really hurts. Anything else, Nate? Yes. Next time Bella does it, tell her you need a spanking, Bella, and do the same thing to Bella. I came across an example of someone that evidently didn't experience boundaries or discipline. This is a picture of a guy in court. He's taking his parents to court. There in the corner is their home. He's in his 30s. He won't leave the house. They say, "You got to go now." And he's not leaving, so he's suing them to stay. He didn't win the case. So you can take a breath. What's the word I'm looking for? A sigh of relief. That's what I was looking for. Take a sigh of relief. Yeah, he didn't win. But oh my goodness. Someone was an absent Adam who wasn't fulfilling the role God gave him to fulfill, and that's the result. I mean, that's an extreme example. I hope that's an extreme example. That your kids need you to be their protector. See it, understand it as protecting them. They need deep down to know there's boundaries because that's where they find protection. And although they might complain and push against them, they want boundaries because clearly defined lines of what is appropriate and what is not actually creates security for kids. And so you lay the boundaries out clearly, you explain why the boundaries exist, and you stick to them. And when they push against those boundaries, and they will, don't be discouraged. That's just how they figure out if what you are saying is actually true and important and real to you. God has made you the shepherd of your family, so shepherd them with an upright heart and guide them with a skillful hand. If you want to be an MVP dad, you need to wear the shoes of a protector. Be a protector. As the apostle told the Corinthian men, be watchful, be on guard, keep your eyes open for spiritual danger. As your family's protector, you are acting as God's protective covering over your family. Yeah, you got to protect in all sorts of areas. What are they watching on their screens? You got to get filters. You have to get filters on your phone, on your computer. And if you don't like the hassle it is, here's what I say. Go down to Home Depot, get a ladder, and get over it. Because you're supposed to be protecting your kids. You know, we didn't have sleepovers. You know why? We didn't send our kids to sleepovers because sleepovers are where things that you don't want to happen often happen. In fact, if you look at the statistics in the police stations, that's what happens. It's not usually the home that you're sending them to. It's maybe a cousin who comes by and does things you don't want done. And so my response, every time, Dad, can I sleep? My response was, play until your tongues are hanging out because you're so tired. Come home, you sleep, and the next morning you go back and start over again. And that was our approach, because I felt responsible to protect in all kinds of ways. I even felt responsible to protect when it came to dating. In one instance, I remember I told my child, I don't think that person, it's not a good idea, son. And they listened. And it went well for him as we saw how things unfolded in her life. And so you protect them in every dimension of their world. You don't smother them, but you cover them. Does that make sense? Are you with me? I've got one more. Now here's the last one. Shoes on VP dads wear. I think I saved the best for last. You need to be a forgiver. You need to be a forgiver. Children need at times to make their own mistakes and know they still will be accepted when they are ready to be restored. If they take a step away from you and break fellowship with you, when they're ready to be restored, they need to know they will be accepted. They will be forgiven. The other Friday night, a couple of Fridays ago, I spent time with my youngest son, and we went out to dinner, and he's about to leave for college in a couple months. 2 months, and he'll be gone. And we'll be empty nesters. And I decided to have a conversation where I told him about my life at college, where I began before I met Jesus, what I did, how it went for me. And I wanted to tell him, because I wanted him to know that despite the brokenness that I took upon myself doing my life my own way, outside of the protective umbrella covering of my parents' home, when I went off to college, despite how far I went south, God called me to himself, and I received forgiveness, and I was brought to a place from the pit, out of the pit. And so he needed to know I've experienced grace. He's only known me as a pastor. Since he was born, I was a pastor. Other years as the pastor? No. Before I was a pastor, I was someone who needed grace. Well, I needed grace now too. I'm sorry if I'm giving you the wrong impression. I need grace now too. Have you extended grace to me anytime recently? It's Father's Day. Today would be a good day. As a Cornerstone dads and moms, you need to know, as good as your intentions and as good as your play on the court in wearing all the sets of shoes, don't ever assume all the credit or take all the responsibility for the choices your children make. You can do all things right. You can model, listen, encourage, teach, protect, and they can still make ridiculous choices, okay? That's why they need to also know that you're a forgiver. Because they need to know, even when they stumble and fall, grace is waiting for them. And you know what? Even when they make bad choices, even when they make mistakes, and they're going to make mistakes, even then, and maybe in some cases, when they rebel to the point where your hearts are breaking, even then, they need to know that you're someone who will forgive. I don't know where your kids are. I don't know the poor choices and mistakes they've made. But I know God has plans, and he wants to bring them home like the prodigal son. Because God has never stopped loving them, just as he's never stopped loving you. Maybe it's you today. Maybe you had a small, quiet voice telling your heart, it's you. Maybe you've come to realize, I'm the prodigal son, I'm the prodigal daughter, I need a father, I need forgiveness, I need to start over. I'm the one who's been away from God. If that's you on this Father's Day weekend, this would be a good day to come back to the Father who loves you. So would you pray with me? As we bow our heads, and if it's you that needs to come back to God the Father, and receive his forgiveness and restoration, then put your hand on your heart. It's between you and the Lord, just you and the Lord. I'm not even looking at it, just between you and the Lord. Put your hand on your heart. Father God, I thank you, Lord, for revealing yourself as our Father. I thank you that you've entrusted us with a calling, us dads. And you've entrusted everyone here to be a spiritual influencer who points people towards you. Lord, I pray for those of us who need forgiveness today. I pray that you'd give us the grace we need to confess and tell you what it is and how we've stepped away from that circle of blessing. Lord, I pray that you would give us what we need today, a heart that knows it's forgiven and a fellowship that's restored with you. Father God, I pray the same for dads who have to do something in the coming days to take a step towards their children, to let them know they are accepted and they can be forgiven, and fellowship can be restored. Lord, I pray for the grace to do that. And help every young woman and young man who are moving on from their home this summer and on to college or life lived on their own. Lord, let them be people who stand on the spiritual legacy and shoulders of their parents. Let the baton be passed, I pray. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. We have time for a closing song. I was looking at the clock going, what time is it? I got to get used to the new time. I'm like, wait a minute, do we have time? We do. So I'd like us to sing a song that speaks of God's blessing. And as we sing, would you just have your palms up in a posture of receiving? You're receiving. And every time we say amen, we're saying, I agree. Yes, count me in. I want that. I want that for my life. I want that for my family, my children, and my children's children. So we're going to be led in song by music team leaders from about 24 churches in the United Kingdom. Thought of it as sort of as honor of our missionaries, Brian and Patty Nelson are in England. All these churches united together are going to lead us via video. So go ahead and let's join them with our own voices.
Lord bless you and keep you.
Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Lord turn his face toward you
And give you peace. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you
and be gracious to you.
The Lord turn his face toward you
And give you peace.
protected. May the peace that surpasses all understanding be our message. Grace and favors in your nature, in your
May
essence.
His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. 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 He is for you.
Amen, amen, amen.
May His favor be upon you and 1,000 generations, and your family, and your children, and their children, and their children. May His presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you. He is with you in the morning, in the evening, in your coming and your going, in your weeping and rejoicing. He is for you. 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 He is for
Now that I'm a grandfather, I weep every time I sing. I don't know what's going on with me. Next Sunday, I want you to be ready. We're going to give an opportunity for you to share what God has been showing you in your lives during these recent weeks. What God has been showing you. So we're going to give a chance for anyone who has something to pass on, to bless and edify us. You'll have that chance next week. The week after that, July 4th weekend, we're going to have communion for the first time in this room in a long time. We have a way of doing it that will take all sorts of precautions, so I'm looking forward to that too. If you have a prayer need or anything, there are connect cards in the back, and connect cards in the back of the church, but there's also on the tables back there. Just write down your need, whether it's prayer, whether it's a praise report. Take the pen with you, put the card in the drop box. This is also the time when you exit to worship the Lord with your giving. So we're going to pray for that in a moment. And I feel like there's one more thing I want to tell you. But it's not coming to me. That's okay. Let me pray over your rest of this day. Father God, I pray for your blessing on each life here. I thank you, Lord, for how people are drawn to you and your Holy Spirit does the wooing, and how each person here has responded to you, Lord. I thank you, Lord. I thank you for how you honor those who honor you, and you're going to honor them in their families' lives. And so I thank you, Lord, for the way these families have experienced your presence, your blessing. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity to give, and pray that you do great things with it. And now, I ask you for your blessing. Would you bless and keep each precious life here? Would you turn your face and your smile towards them and be gracious to them? Would you turn your countenance towards them, towards us, and give us peace? And I pray this in your precious name, Lord Jesus. And all God's people say, amen, amen. Have a great Father's Day. Have a great week. I'll see you next week. God bless you.